everybody, welcome back. Second Eric here. This is my fourth entry into the Acid Archive Diaries. In case you guys missed it, I'm going to link to the description below Dom, Seekingathread, his original video on this topic. And I've really been enjoying the playlist of videos he's curated so far. I think I checked this morning, it looks like there's 25 videos in total. So keep the videos rolling, man. I haven't commented on every single one, but I've been watching them. And it's a fun thread to dive into, you know, if you're into this sort of thing, like I am. And, you know, and if you haven't made a YouTube video before, you know, it's kind of a good way to get your foot in the door and maybe encourage some people to dive into the topic. Because, you know, compared to showing off 5 or 10 albums per video, it's kind of nice to just kind of condense it down to one. And that's what I'm going to kind of do in this one. I'm not going to go maybe nearly as long, maybe 10-15 minutes, 5 less minutes than the last time, but I do like to do kind of thorough videos, and you know, it gets me kind of excited to talk about these once again as well. So without too much introduction, let's dive right in. So this is not necessarily one you would think as an Acid Archive entry, but I was kind of looking in my shelves behind me over the weekend. I thought I never thought about putting this in there. And it's kind of more fun to show off the original copies compared to reissues, you know, at least for a while. And then I'll kind of go back to reissues, stuff that's like uber rare, never going to pay $1,000 for. Talk about some of those, but yeah, this is one I acquired, I think maybe 2016, 17, around there. It's not one I listen to all the time, but when the moment's right, especially the changing of the seasons, this is going to be a good one to spin once again. And this is Mark Eric, A Midsummer's Daydream. I think this came out in 1969. I forgot the year check on this. 68 or 69, around there. His original name is Mark Eric Malmborg, and he was based out of the Southern California area. Not a whole lot of info on his backstory. It seems like maybe he had acted for a time shortly after this, with like being kind of like a background character in shows like Hawaii Five-0 and The Partridge Family. And then like years later he'd be an entertainment director on like cruise ships. It's kind of some info I found with different sources online. But yeah, this came out on the Review label, which was a subsidiary of MCA Uni. So it's kind of, if this was on Uni, it would definitely be in the probably top 5, top 10 at least. Had it been on the Uni label. But yeah, man, this is great. So if I had to use like some adjectives to use this, you know, I listed some down here to remind myself of like how this record makes me feel. So I put like wistful, you know, longing for kind of a summer romance type of vibe. Very melancholy, but yet kind of a feel-good sort of sunny California record. And it's got like, even though it's kind of melancholy in some ways, there's definitely a contrast of more like feel-good, kind of upbeat sunshine pop going on here. And this often gets kind of compared to like Brian Wilson, if he would done like a solo record around this time. If it were a little more on like the dreamy side, or a little bit more on the easy listening, kind of soft pop realm. And that's a very good way to describe this. It's got a very good warmth to it. I mean, the cover right there just depicts what you're going to get into. So with Mark Eric's voice, I mean, people may love it or hate it, but I'm kind of like pretty much on the positive side of that. I think his voice works, but it's kind of in that almost nasally sort of Billy Nichols kind of approach to his vocals. Like, he might be a baritone voice, but he's kind of reaching for those high notes. And he always makes it, but it's just not what you would expect. Like, you'd think maybe it'd be more like a feathery or kind of a lightweight approach, considering the genre. But, you know, songs like Move with the Dawn, he always kind of goes like, I gotta move with the dawn. And then, what's the other one? I'd like to talk to you. Ending side 1 there. Yeah, man, this has got 12 tracks in total. And I think it opens up maybe the best. Once side 2 kind of concludes, you know, maybe not nearly as memorable. California Home, and then Move with the Dawn. And then probably my favorite track out of all these, Where Do the Girls of the Summer Go? might be the quote-unquote psychedelic song. There's not a lot of like psych pop moments on here. It's, like I said, very vocal driven, kind of sunshine pop, and sort of that easy listening affair. And what makes that track kind of psychedelic, I mean by that, is that, you know, there's more use of like vibraphones, a little bit of like harmonic delays going on. Not too heavy, but it's very dreamy. It's a very dreamy, kind of groovy, almost kind of loungy kind of track. And then oftentimes people kind of highlight the track Night of the Lions, which opens up side 2, which was featured on a biker soundtrack, I believe. I forget the name of which one, but it was featured on there, and it is a strong track, definitely, and it's the only song that gets the lyric credits on the back here. So let's read the back here of what it says about Mark Eric. It says, a series of thoughts, images, or emotions occurring, a state of mind of one who is abstracted or lost in imagery or vision. He who is able to invent, devise, or concoct, especially in an outburst of artistic improvisation or an unbridled flight of fancy. This is Mark Eric. And this would be his one and only solo record. I think he did release a couple singles from this, maybe an on LP. And most recently there's been a reissue of this last year that came out in the UK. From what I've seen on Discogs, looks like there's no copies in the US, so I don't know how available it is here in the States. I imagine it sounds good. Then there was a track on here that's actually not featured on the record. The original release, it was later released on the reissue on CD. I think it was on the Revola label, which I've heard some sketchy things about, but anyways, I guess they somehow got a hold of like different sessions during the time, and I think it's a nearly hour-long release, and you can find it on YouTube here. There's a full upload. But there's a track called Build Your Own Dreams. I think it's his best track. Coming from a writing standpoint, the way the track kind of builds and into this kind of crescendo, it's a beautiful track. I recommend looking that track up. It says sample copy here, by the way, but on the label it doesn't say promotion. But with this record, I mean, it's just a lot of beautiful sounds. They got the Wrecking Crew on here. It doesn't really specify which members of the Wrecking Crew played on this, but Vic Briggs of The Animals did most of the arrangements here, kind of co-writing, I think, with Mark Eric. And then I also noted here there's some French horns and some vibraphones in the mix, which kind of gives it that, you know, very sophisticated style. And it doesn't really reflect on like any negative 60s impacts as far as like the Vietnam War is concerned or protest. It's just in a very positive, sunshiny mood here all the way throughout. It kind of gave me some notes here so I could remember what to say, but yeah, it was produced by Norm Ratner, who produced a few different uni titles, and then he went on to do like The Leaves and several pop songs like, you know, Bobby Jameson. And it kind of gives it that kind of Bobby Jameson quality too with this album Color Me In. It's a little bit on that tip too, which is a good recommendation what this sounds like. And also if you're into the stuff like Free Design or the arranger Bergen White, Millennium, or even just a dreamier sounding Beach Boys, this is definitely worth your time here. So yeah, I think that's all I got to say about this. Otherwise, not sure if he's alive to this day. If he got the rights to release the most recent reissue, I'm not sure. Otherwise, he kind of seems to be like an enigmatic sort of artist from the time period. It had a lot of great, you know, it's got these great big teeth and great smile, just a handsome 19-year-old that came and went. Just not a lot known about him. Let's get a look at the label here. Plays about VG. It's got a few scuffs and things, but review label. But it definitely plays through. It's a very bright production. Just a very sophisticated sound, but not in a super commercial, sappy sort of way like you would expect in a lot of these Sunshine Pop records. I mean, it gets an Acid Archive entry, so it can't be too pedestrian, right? But let's go ahead and read the statement here. So, let's see, we got one review, inaccurately hyped as Psych, which I can kind of agree with. This is basically a Beach Boys imitation, which still makes it appealing to collectors. It's comparable to Billy Nichols, which I've also mentioned. I can get on board with that anyways, as Mark Eric has a very similar voice, but it lacks the songwriting talent and diversity of arrangements of the Nichols album. Some of the album too soft and sweet to work, but about half of it is quite good, peaking on Night of the Lions, which proves even wimps can have a healthy sex drive. No comment. So, there you have it. Yeah, this is very good, man. So, like I said, I don't pull this one out too often, but I definitely wanted to give this a little shout out. Doesn't really get talked about much, and even original copies, I think even when I bought this, you know, they're kind of up in the 100 plus range anymore. You just never see copies pop up very often. And I got this like on a bid, I think for like 30 bucks or something, which is a pretty good deal considering, you know, it's not the best shape. It's like VG overall. But, yeah, Mark Eric, A Midsummer's Daydream. Sunshine pop, kind of easy listening, but in a very, very cool light. I was actually kind of surprised it was in the book. I guess at the time, maybe it was even pretty seldom seen out in the wild as well at that time, 20 years ago. And I will be getting the second edition soon, so see what the revised edit of the entry says. And it's definitely going to be a thicker book. I've never had the second edition, but it's pretty thin compared to the second edition I've seen where it's like King James version. Anyways, enough silliness. I think I have my next entry lined up as well, so look forward to that. And that one's going to be a little more on the goofy side. I'm trying to kind of mix it up a little bit in terms of style, which I think, you know, will kind of help people get an idea of what this is all about. So, take care, Mark Eric, and we shall see you soon.